Welcome to the Diary of a Medicinal Chemist.
Welcome to the Diary of a Medicinal Chemist. Today I'll be reflecting on a number of issues that are shaping the pharmaceutical ecosystem. And in a couple of my other videos that will be coming up, I'll be looking at taking an expert view, looking into the pharmaceutical ecosystem from the lens of a policymaker and also a researcher. So for today, I will be discussing the complex issues that are, of course, shaping the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, whatever shapes the pharmaceutical industry would also have an effect on the general well being in terms of accessibility to drugs and so on of the common populace. And that is why it is important we look at some of these issues. Now, across the pharmaceutical industry, one trend is becoming increasingly clear. The pipeline for new therapies is not just growing, it is also evolving because we are beginning to see a gradual shift from the traditional small drug molecules to more complex biologics, including the monoclonal antibodies, gene therapies, and cell based treatments. Now, these innovations are, of course, redefining how we approach disease management. And this is because conditions that were thought to be difficult and even practically impossible to treat are now being addressed with unprecedented precision. Now, these innovations or the innovations are not the full story. We also have the regulatory agencies who are also adapting. There is this growing emphasis on accelerated approval pathways. Many years ago, it takes 15, 20, an average of 15 years to bring a drug from discovery to market. And we are seeing these accelerated approval pathways where drugs are granted approval faster, of course, which is making it easier for patients to have access promising therapies. But with this increased speed of discovery and even approval, the downside of it is that, of course, the regulatory agencies must step up their game in terms of must become more resilient in terms of post-market surveillance, because if we are cutting down the number of years from discovery to clinicals to approval, that means there must be an attendant mechanism to really check the safety of these drugs in the long run. So the regulatory agencies are beginning to place a greater weight on post-market surveillance, which is closely monitoring the drug. We call that pharmacovigilance, even after it has been approved. So the main issue here is that approval is no longer the final checkpoint. In fact, it is a part of the continuous process of evaluation. Now, another issue that demands attention is also the issue of access to essential medicines. Despite the remarkable scientific progress that we are witnessing in drug discovery in terms of these new breakthroughs, newer drugs being designed, new innovations, and so on. Despite all this, millions of people around the world don't still have access to what I can describe as basic life-saving treatments. Now, if you ask me, the reasons for these are enormous. They are complex, ranging from the high cost of these drugs to the supply chain limitations to um, the approval, the regulatory on the part of the regulatory agencies, regulatory barriers, and even in some cases geographical factors and so on. So this is a kind of creating a growing gap between innovation on one side and availability, accessibility on the other side. Okay, so while the pharmaceutical industry um, celebrates breakthroughs and so on, it must also confront a very difficult question, and that is who truly benefits from these advancements. Now, another issue that is again generating a lot of wave is that there is this growing scrutiny on the pricing strategies for these new drugs that are being developed. Now, because governments, healthcare providers, and even patients are asking whether the cost of these new therapies reflects the value. So, in response to this, there has been a number of models being explored in the ecosystem currently, and one of such is the value-based pricing. This simply links the cost or links the value, the cost of a drug to the value it delivers. And although this is still evolving, it reflects what I can describe as a paradigm shift towards accountability in healthcare. Now, aside this, supply chain resilience has also become a central concern, particularly after the aftermath of the global disruptions in the recent years. Of course, COVID-19 and a number of things disrupted the supply chain ecosystem in terms of drug discovery. Some countries rely on other climes, particularly in Africa. Over 70% of the drugs we use in Africa are gotten as sourced from other clients. And so imagine having, for instance, Nigeria has a very robust supply chain with India, and that is why you see many of these anti-malaria drugs and a number of other generic drugs are manufactured in India and imported to Nigeria. So there is this supply chain. And what we are beginning to see is that pharmaceutical companies are also reevaluating where and how drugs are manufactured, and there is this increased focus on local production and diversification. Also, another issue of importance that we can also begin to look at is the digitalization within the industry. Now, from clinical trials design to even pharmacovigilance, digital tools are employed to improve efficiency and, of course, improved data record. Now, this has brought about improved efficiency in a way, which has led to better decision making in the life cycle of new drugs and so on. Now, but there's an attendant risk to this, and of course, innovation sometimes come with their own share of challenges, and in this case, we are beginning to see stakeholders concerns about data privacy and also cybersecurity. So, in all of these emerging issues, in all of these current trends, in all of these dynamics that we are witnessing within the pharma ecosystem, it shows that the industry is more dynamic than ever because it is more like an intersect. It is now a place where science, economics, um, ethics, and all of this intersect. So it is just beyond discovering the drug and so on. There are a number of economics involved in drug discovery, even ethics. So, but going forward, personally, I believe the challenge of the pharmaceutical ecosystem or the pharmaceutical industry will be balance. Now, how do we balance innovation with availability? How do we balance safety? How do we balance speed with safety? How do we balance um, profitability on the part of the pharmaceutical companies and the public health needs? Because at its core, the goal of the pharmaceutical industry remains unchanged. It is to improve and save life. So, on that premise, I want to sincerely appreciate you for listening to this episode. Join me next time to again take another in-depth analysis of a number of other things, a number of dynamics within the pharmaceutical ecosystem, and trying to bring you up to speed with recent happenings within the pharmaceutical ecosystem. Till then, I remain Suleiman Badmos. Many thanks for watching.